2 moons ago, I was making my tri-weekly McDonald's trip. My local McDonald's is like a second home to me. I know all the employees by name and love them dearly. I've even split a Big Mac with the manager before. I pulled into the almost empty parking lot and delicately maneuvered my automobile into my personal parking space. I quickly shot a glance at my clock, which read 2:09. 2:09? I blurted out. That can't be right. I then remembered that the clock in my car was wrong. Depressed, I stuck my hand into my warm polyester pocket. My hand searched the abyss known as my pocket diligently. My heart was pounding at this point. I then felt it. The smooth silicone that is my phone case. I gripped it and quickly ripped it from my pocket. I turned it on and groaned in pain. Ugh. It hurt my eyes to look within the glass rectangle. It was the brightest thing my mole-like eyes had ever seen. I don't know how to change the brightness, so I rarely ever use my phone in order to preserve my eyes. After a few minutes of attempting to decipher the time that was lost within this piercing light, I was able to learn that the time was 6:41 p.m. I put my phone back inside my pocket and exited my car. The sun was beginning to set. The sky was a rich collage of oranges and reds. I stopped and gazed upon this natural beauty before me, but I did not want to be without my McDonald's meal longer than I had to. I walked up to the door and pushed it open. I stepped inside and took a deep breath. The smell of juicy burgers and freshly baked apple pies flooded my nostrils, and my mind began to enter a trance. The feeling of spit dripping down my body was enough to break the spell I was under. Finally home, I said quietly. I started my journey into this heaven-like place. Half the lights were off, and there was only one other customer there. It was an ancient-looking man, dressed from head to toe in black watch plaid. The man looked hypnotized, his dreamy eyes transfixed onto his tray. Strangely, the only thing in his tray was a single French fry. It was no ordinary French fry, I quickly deduced. It was abnormally large, as large as 6 cat femurs bundled together. The French fry was also bright yellow. I shifted my gaze away from the sad-looking man and headed towards the counter to place my order. I had never seen the man who was at the register tonight before. He was scruffy-looking. He looked to be in his middle years, but truthfully, he could have been 20 or 70, and I would not have been able to tell by looking at him. I hope you understand. He was wearing a piece of headwear known as a beanie with a bright yellow M on it. A new hire, I thought to myself. I need to make a good impression. I decided to tickle his funny bone by ejaculating the funniest voice I could come up with upon his ears. I continued my way towards the counter. Drip, drip, drip. A leak from the ceiling caught my attention as I grew ever nearer to the man. I stopped my walking because I had reached the counter. I prepared to make my order. Ahem! I cleared my throat in order to make my presence known to the man who had been turned away from the counter at this point. As soon as I made a sound, the man spun around at lightning speed and glared at me. His filmy orbs pierced my soul, instilling an eerie sense of dread deep within my stomach. I stood silently for 10 seconds before daring to speak again. I began to order. I opened my mouth, and the voice that rang from me was so funny. Oh, so funny. So funny. It took all the power within me to stop myself from chortling at myself. I would like, I began, a 10-piece chicken nugget meal with a Fanta, 3 cheeseburgers, an apple pie, and a large chocolate milkshake. The man looked unamused as he took my order. Why? I thought. Why isn't he laughing? That always works. I furrowed my brow. This man is the opposite of normal. I began to take out my wallet to pay. Before I was able to reveal the leathery square to the man, he began to speak. Would you like to try our new special item, the banana fry? A sinister grin began to form on his oblong face. A banana what now? I questioned, still doing the voice I committed myself to, hoping still he would find it humorous. The banana fry, he continued. It's made from real bananas. It's really yummy. I promise, you've never had anything like it before. The man's grin morphed into a full-toothed smile at this point, his piercing black eyes staring at me, unblinking. I'll try it, I suppose, I muttered. Moments after these words left my mouth, the man let out a howling cackle that echoed throughout the whole restaurant. The man stopped laughing as suddenly as he had started. Even the plaid-coated man's meditative state was disrupted by this horrible sound. and told me my total. I quickly paid the fee and walked away. I stood anxiously waiting for my feast. It felt like time had slowed down as I stood there as a stone sculpture stands in a rich man's garden. After this grueling wait, my order number was called. I quickly grabbed my bags and swiftly departed from this once soothing place. I climbed into my car and tried to calm myself down. I was quite perplexed by what had just happened and decided I needed to do something to ease my soul. I shut my eyes and began to do a breathing exercise that my Uncle Ronnie had taught me. "Do this when you get scared, pussy." His words rang clear within my mind. In and out. In and out. In and out. I could feel the fear exiting my body. It felt wonderful. All my worries had vanished. I was finally at peace. The odor from my McDonald's meal had become prevalent in my car. I could feel it making its way through my nose holes, tickling each and every nose hair that I called my own. A smile began to form on my face. I let out a small chuckle to myself and said, "Ha, this is what happiness feels like, I'm sure of it." Suddenly, a loud knocking occurred. I yelped. My heart started to pound rapidly. My peaceful moment had been ended by what I could only assume was a creature with malintent. I quickly opened my eyes and gazed towards the source of the sound. I felt as if my shade had left my body, and I looked over, and I saw those inky black eyes staring at me, unblinking, staring at me. The McDonald's employee made a gesture with his hands. Confused by this, I rolled down my window and questioned the fiend. "What's with the gang signs, Honcho?" "What?" the man retorted. "I was trying to get you to roll down your window." My response was simple. "I see." 7 seconds of silence passed before the man spoke again. "You dropped this when you left." He slowly handed me his enclosed fist. I carefully unfolded his pale, bony fingers, similar to how a child unwraps their Christmas package. Within his hand lay a single quarter. I grabbed it and thanked the man, who simply winked in response. He ran back inside, and I thought it best to leave swiftly before anything else happened. I drove faster than I normally do as I headed home, my heart still beating from the previous interaction. I reached my home in a decent amount of time and exited my car with my meal. I opened the door of my house, and my nose instantly became infected with the stench of my mother's cooking. I loudly exclaimed, "I'm home!" and darted to my room before my family members could react. I scanned my room to make sure nothing had been touched or, God forbid, moved. I then sat in my vintage yellow McDonald's chair I had found on Facebook Marketplace a few years ago. I only sit in this chair when I have a McDonald's meal to eat. I began the ceremony. First, I ate all of my French fries. Then I started to eat my chicken nuggets. I ate 5 before stopping. I then devoured 2 of my cheeseburgers. I then took a short bathroom break and drank my milkshake and ate my apple pie. I flushed the toilet and returned to my room. I ate the last cheeseburger and 3 more nuggets. I chugged my Fanta and finally ingested the last 2 nuggets. "What a wonderful meal!" I exclaimed. "This is truly the highlight of my day." As I sat there thinking about my meal, I began to smell it. The banana fry. The thought of it had removed itself from my mind, but its now potent odor had reminded me of this odd food. I peered inside the bag and looked at it. Its yellow hue had a soothing effect on my mind. I reached inside the bag and firmly grasped it. I sat down on my throne and slowly licked my lips before inserting the yellow object into my mouth. I took a bite and let it sit on my tongue for a minute or two before swallowing. It was the most delicious thing I'd ever had in all my years alive. I devoured the rest of it in no time at all. I leaned back in my chair and laughed to myself. Ha 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 ha! I then maneuvered to my bed and fell asleep. I woke up with the sensation of my mother shaking me vigorously. "It's TV time," she said. Every day my family, which consists of me, my mother, my uncle, and his male lover, all gather together to watch a bit of television together. We enjoy this activity immensely as it helps us feel more connected as a family. My mother and I entered the TV room where my uncle and his lover were already sat waiting for us. We all sat together on the sofa and held hands. My uncle operated the TV and put a show on called The Boys, one of the funniest shows ever made. We all watched it happily for 25 minutes before I suddenly let out a loud yell. I fell to the ground and gripped my stomach. The agony I felt in that moment was indescribable. It felt as if I was being bitten by 1,000 fire ants while simultaneously having a rusty knife plunged deep into my lungs. My family had come down from the sofa and surrounded me at this point, trying to make sense of my sudden change of mood. I screamed and screamed. Ah! Ah! What is happening? My uncle yelled into my ear. My mother ran from the room and returned with a wet rag and placed it on my forehead. After 20 or so minutes, the pain began to subside and I stopped screaming. My family embraced me and helped me to my feet. Then they all said something horrible. Your skin, they said in unison. It's yellow. I had no words. I began to think that this was merely all a dream and swiftly kicked my uncle's lover in the balls. The man fell to the floor and screamed loudly while gripping his family jewels. My uncle's jaw dropped, and he kicked me in my balls as retaliation. I howled loudly, "Ah! Ah!" and came to the conclusion that this was in fact not a dream. Suddenly, without warning, a horn-like deformity erupted from my scalp. I screamed in pain. The pain, I assure you, if you felt it, you would end your own life. My mother then said, "You look like a banana." "What? What?" I shrieked and jolted to the bathroom to look in the mirror. My reflection was horrifying. My skin was banana yellow. On my head was a banana stem, and I felt my skin. The texture of it was reminiscent of a banana. I wept. I wept until I could weep no more. And when I could weep no more, I simply sat in silence. My family stood at the bathroom door and watched. There was nothing they could do but watch. They knew, as did I, that I would soon fully transform. It was clear. When it is clear that I am more banana than man, eat me, dear mother, please, I said solemnly. She nodded and I went to my room, climbed into my bed, and entered my final slumber. Epilogue. Uncle Ronnie here. I will now recount the events of the morrow after my nephew's transformation. When we woke up the next morning, he had fully transformed into a banana the size of a 5'6" man. We took his body to the kitchen and laid it on the table. We cried together for hours and paid our respects. We then pulled off the exterior of the banana boy and ate him. It took us hours. My sister vomited multiple times. It was the hardest thing any of us had ever had to do, and we hated every moment of it. But we had to do it. I leave you now with a warning. Never eat the banana fry from McDonald's.